all, we've got some welcomes. So we've already done a couple of introductions there. Lillian's been doing some good recruiting at the Blackboard conference, I understand. And we've got Ibrahim, Sam and Ross from Durham University going to be joining us. So I think I can definitely see Sam here today. And I think Ibrahim's coming to the next meeting. Yeah, Sam and Ross today, and then Ibrahim at the next one. Lovely. Okay. Do you want to just quickly tell us where you are and what you do there? So Sam, if we started with you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, so I'm Sam. I'm in the maths department. Sorry, this camera on this monitor does not like when I start talking as well, it freezes. I'll keep turning it off and on again to hopefully get it to work. Okay, I'll leave it like that for a second. Yeah, so I'm in the maths department. So I'm an assistant professor in the maths department, working on trying to create some accessible documents just as a part of my teaching role. I guess I should say I've got a teaching focused role. So I'm on what Durham calls the education track.
And Ross?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Ross from Durham. I work in a central department called the Centre for Academic Development. We love an acronym, so we call it DCAD at Durham. And my role is probably somewhat similar to a learning technologist. So I mostly work with academic staff, supporting them in learning and teaching. And I've worked quite a bit with Sam before and looking at how we can help make maths more accessible. And yeah, so I probably can relate to a lot of you that are in the call.
Thanks, both. Yeah, what places call learning technologists or digital learning people, or what they call university teachers or university lecturers or teaching focused? Yeah, a whole nother thing of what a university is doing. So it's nice to have some extra people here. We had a suggestion last time that we would bring an academic transcriber or student. I think really we'd like to just keep that open. Please do invite other people, bring other people along, because it's nice to try and connect up people. And once we've got you into the meetings, you don't necessarily have to come to all the meetings, but you might find it useful to be on the list where you get the emails to see what's going on and be able to pop in when it suits you. So there's a few bits today. So we've got Ross was going to talk about Chirun, I think, and Sam about pandoc and text to HTML. I've got a little update on Telmo, and then we've got member updates of what people have been up to. So for people who are just joining us, if you've got a member update that you particularly want to make sure we get in there, can you just pop it in the messy working document, and then we know to come to you first? Otherwise, I'll go around to people and just see where things are up to. So if we were to start off with a bit about Chirun, are you happy to kick us off, Ross?
Yes, that's absolutely fine. I should probably say at this stage that it's great to see Christian on the call. I feel like a bit of a fraud talking about Chirun when Christian's here, but anyway, what I'll do is I'll show you what we've done, and it's very basic, and talk a little bit about it. But if you have any difficult questions, then you can aim them at Christian. That would be nice. Right. So as I say, so I'm Ross from Durham. I work as I mentioned, in a central department, and probably like many of you that are in this call, and probably the reason why this group exists is we're challenging with how to make maths more accessible. And one of the approaches that we took is to look at the tool that Newcastle University have developed called Chirun, and are continuing to develop, I should say. And I should probably be open and honest in saying that we've not got too far with it yet, despite sort of grappling with it for probably maybe 6 months, 8 months, maybe more. Essentially what we've done is we don't like to do things too quickly at Durham. Maybe other universities can relate to that, but essentially what we've done is put Chirun on our Blackboard Learn Ultra test server, essentially. And that is allowing our academic staff and colleagues to have a look about how this works in practice, and they can see how it's making that conversion of LaTeX or markdown files into accessible HTML maths entirely in the browser and within their Learn Ultra course as well. So I'm conscious that maybe not everyone on this call is using Blackboard Learn Ultra, so apologies if that's not the case, but I do believe it's a standard LTI integration, so it will work with other VLEs or LMSs. So what I can do is give you a very, very short demo if I share my screen. So I'm just going to try and share the browser because I'm on quite a large monitor here. So hopefully you can, oops. Can you see that okay? You can.
That's
fantastic. So you can probably see that there's a sample file in here from Chirun. What I'll do is I'll just open this up and show you how it works, but I'll go through the process of actually uploading it ourselves first. So essentially, if I open this up, I'm seeing this from an instructor perspective here. So this is where I could remove the file or replace it or upload new file if I want to, or change the configuration. But if I go into here, it's got a handy view content. So you can go through a standard student preview, as you're probably already familiar with, but we can do it here as well and just go view as student. Now, what you can see here is it's this is a file already converted into HTML. You can see at the top here, there's a settings cog. So we've got a bit of control over how this appears. So for instance, if you prefer that in a on a dark theme to change the colors around, or you could do it in pastel, which I tend to quite like. You've got the ability to change things like the spacing if you want to here, and as well as the font size. If I close this, you will see that Newcastle have built in things like MathJax is built straight into it. So you have got all the affordances of MathJax built right in. So all this should comply with our accessibility requirements. This is a sample file that's been provided by Newcastle, but we have thrown a couple of our own documents at it as well. So with some success and some challenges as well that I'll talk about in a moment. If I go back a step, what I'll show you is essentially how this is built. So if I go back to the Learn Ultra course itself, it's just a standard LTI item. So if I went into the content market, you can see that we've put Chirun in here. We've set this up just now, test server at the minute. I click the plus icon and it creates that sort of placeholder for it there. So you'll see that that is by default hidden from students. I'll just make it visible now. And if I go into the item, you can see that you can configure it at that stage, and it's saying that it'll allow things like a LaTeX file, markdown file, or a zip folder as well. If I simply upload a file, and I've got some on my desktop here, I think it was just the sample LaTeX file here. If I upload this, it's not a very big file, so the conversion's quite quick. So you'll see that it's just running through some scripts in the background. And in a moment, it will tell me that this is complete. There we go. So that's finished. So if I can close that, or I can just view it as we are now. So I can go view as student, and it's the same file that I was showing you just a moment ago. You will see that for many, it does also include the PDF file, which I think a lot of people, much to our frustration with PDFs, I think that there will be a lot of people that this appeals to as well. So you can open the original sort of PDF. Well, I should say not the original, but the more traditional PDF that you would see as lecture notes. So they are there, and will keep people happy who prefer to work from PDFs. But it's giving the user's choice essentially, and students' choice, which I think we would agree is always a good idea. And that is probably it in terms of what I need to demo. There's probably not much else. The only thing that I would say, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions if I can about this, but we've probably only had half a dozen or so academics interacting with this. We want more and we'll keep pushing for more, but we do have the challenge that everyone's busy and this is work on top of their existing workloads. So we have had a few people try this out. Some people have hit errors with it. So I know that there was somebody that was wanting to use a package called RevTech. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it threw up an error at that stage. And I did sort of reach out to Newcastle. It was actually one of Christian's colleagues, Chris, and he said that's currently not a package that is supported, but Newcastle are fantastic about it. And they actually developed that into the product. And a couple of weeks later, support for RevTech was built in. The same has happened with a Tix package as well. That's now in there as well. So in our experience, it's been very good. It's not done everything, but as long as we can appreciate that, you know, work is ongoing, Newcastle can constantly making iterative improvements and changes to this, then I've been really happy with what we've seen so far. The biggest challenge with this is just getting people to have a look at it and have a play with it and give us some feedback. But Newcastle have been, like Chris and Christian, have been very patient, maybe too patient with us in many ways, in allowing us to kind of just send feedback as and when we have it. But, you know, we're hoping that before long, we will actually have this fully integrated onto our production server, and it will be one of a suite of tools that staff can use to make maths content more accessible. So I think that's about it from me, unless anybody has any questions.
That looks fantastic, Ross and Christian. It looks great. It looks like a very smooth process for the staff side of not having to do the conversions before you upload. So that's fantastic to see. How much bribery did you have to do with your IT services team or equivalent to get them to get it on there on staging? Because I'm just currently working out what whiskey I need to buy Tom Sawyer's right now.
Yeah, there was no no, I tried whiskey, that didn't work, but no, it was just persistence really, and catching people on the right day. Really, it was, I mean, from me putting in a request to put this on our staging server, it must have, you know, probably that sat for 6 weeks, 8 weeks with nothing happening. And eventually I caught somebody with a bit of time on the hands and they were able to put it on for us. But it came with lots of caution and danger and warning signs. And this is a bad idea. You know, we've got to be very careful. But, you know, the reality is that kind of everyone's been fine about it. The biggest challenge is just that it's just, like I said before, just trying to get people to find the time to have a play with it, essentially. But yeah, so I'm hoping that we can get this on a production server, but yeah, that'll be another battle for another day and maybe several more bottles of whiskey.
That's fabulous. I think it's looking like, you know, I'd certainly be happy for our lecturers to have a go at that, especially because it's integrated into Ultra, so that it's very impressive workflow. I just wonder about, I know from our side, we've had to jump through hoops for even Panopto, Mentimeter, all the GDPR, etc. So Christian, will you be helping us to match up the request for information with answers you probably already have? Yeah.
Well, we have to do that for numbers as well. When people ask, it's very often just standard. We don't do anything scary that you would cross any boxes. So it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, so brilliant.
Yeah, I see Lucy's mentioned in the chat as well that you don't have to use it through LTI. It can just produce a set of HTML files. So there's a web interface that you can upload your file to and just get back a zip package that can.
The LTI looks a lot easier though. Doing it on a zip
the reason the
package
LTI
a lot
exists,
of drama.
Yeah, it exists both to make it easy just as for instructors to use, but also for things like withholding access to lecture notes until the week that it's being delivered, which you can't do with static files, but it's just extra stuff.
I really liked it because the amount of I had to do a lot of reorganizing the content collection and adding certain permissions so everyone could view the zip files, and this would just solve all my issues because they'd reduce that whole step. So yeah.
So it sounds like we're going to have a lot of us trying to get this through and see if we could do the GDPR and all of the other hoops to jump through quite soon. It's good to hear, Christian, that you've got a list of those standard answers already. So hopefully not huge amounts there to be done. If we go on to the next one. So
Joshua's got a question, I think.
oh, sorry. I missed
Oh,
that.
sorry, I think it's been partly covered actually about the LTI. So where do the notes live with the LTI? So does every time the student kind of want to access them, they have to go to the LTI server, or do they kind of live on the VLE after being converted?
They live on, so yeah, the LTI server needs rewriting actually. The person who wrote Chirun, George, left us about Easter time, start of the summer. So there hasn't been much development since then. The way it currently works is the LTI server is the thing that has the Chirun code that generates the files, and it is in charge of serving and storing those as well. LTI is just the way that you click a link from the VLE and go through to it. It's not like the pages go into your VLE's content bank.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Yeah. Just a warning for people considering going to their IT people saying, "Can you install this?" The LTI thing George wrote was very quick, just so it would get those functions done. But it's I think needs pretty much a complete rewrite to be a bit more robust. So I'll be doing that at some point if anyone in my team ever gets some free time.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so if we move on to Sam to talk about what's happened with pandoc and text-to-HTML.
Yeah, hi. So I don't think Chirun existed at the point when I started trying to work out a way to generate HTML notes. Maybe Christian tells me I'm wrong with that. But back in 2020 was the first time that the maths department in Durham was seriously trying to make sure that there were HTML notes for all the courses. Sorry, my video's frozen again. I'll just leave it off. And I don't think there were too many tools as sophisticated as Chirun around at the time. So we went down a slightly different route, which is that I knew something called pandoc existed. And pandoc is a tool for converting between lots of different types of file formats. So my first hope was that I could just use pandoc to convert the course notes I'd already got into HTML format and put those on the VLE. And I found there were some problems. Luckily, pandoc has some support for some kind of extensions. And so I was able to add some extensions into pandoc and get it to do things a little bit more the way I was wanting. So I was just going to demo that for you. So let me share a screen. So I think this is something that's being used by a bunch of colleagues in the department, and I think some people elsewhere. I actually wrote up a little bit about it as a blog post on my blog at some point. So if I kind of go too quick at any point during this, please feel free just to search my name and then find this blog post, and you'll be able to see all the instructions a little bit more slowly. So this is what I'm talking about that's not really very catchily called pandoc plus text-to-HTML. So pandoc is an existing tool. I just want to make it clear that I'm not claiming I had anything to do with writing pandoc. And this text-to-HTML is just a few add-ons just to kind of improve the output that I was getting from pandoc. Okay, so I wanted to start with an example file. So I did this initially for myself. So people were used to running PDF LaTeX. So I just want to start with a file and run it through PDF LaTeX and generate a PDF, just so you can see the document that we're starting with. Can everyone see all right, by the way? There's lots of different windows, so hopefully that you can still see all of them. So this is a PDF file which we kind of prepared as an example that had kind of a few different features. So kind of a contents that's hyperlinked, some kind of nice equations. I think there's an image in here somewhere. Yeah, some images, some reference links in between the equations and everything. And so we wanted to try and make sure that we could find something that produced a document like this in HTML. So I'm going to first of all show you what pandoc does if I just run it against this file. So I could do this at the command line. I'm going to assume that you already have pandoc installed. So pandoc is a tool that you would have to install on your computer. But for the purposes of this, I'm just assuming we've got pandoc installed. So from the command line, I'm in the folder. I've browsed in the command line to the folder where all these files are, and I'm just going to run pandoc fourier.tech, which is the example file, and fourier.html as an output file. That was because I forgot to do something, which I've even said in the command that's on the screen to the side of me, I need to do, which is that you need to tell pandoc that this thing wants to be some kind of standalone HTML file. And you also need to tell it that you want to use MathJax. So we had a couple of little options to this command. Okay, hopefully this time we don't have a problem. So this produces an output file, and it's already not actually that bad. It's surprisingly close already for something that runs pretty quickly at the command line, but it's not as nice as the kind of example file we started with. We've lost our kind of contents set of links at the top. We've lost all the references between the different equations. We've lost equation numbering. We've lost figure referencing. So we've lost quite a lot as we've gone to this file. Okay, you can see some of the supposed references between the different equations down here in the file. So text to HTML was supposed to be a set of add-ons to what pandoc can do that just improve what pandoc does. And the idea was that that was something that I could work on and then give to other members of staff in the department that didn't require them to kind of know pretty much anything about how it was working. So it was supposed to be pretty simple for other members of the department to use. And I was assuming that they were happy at the command line because in my experience, most of the mathematicians I work with were happy doing that for things like PDF LaTeX. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a link to this GitHub repository, which is what I wrote. I'm going to copy this link. And at the command line, I'm going to download this set of kind of extra tools. And I'm just going to stick them straight into the kind of the main directory we're working in. So I'm going to copy everything from that directory into the directory we're working in. Right. So this is kind of the step one. I've gone and copied some files alongside the kind of the tech file that I want to work on. And one of the files is this YAML file is kind of a configuration file. That's one of the main things in this tool. So this kind of sets up all of the options that a member of staff, it sets up some sensible defaults for a lot of options that you might otherwise need to use using pandoc. And so let me run the version of pandoc that loads this config file. So it loads the tech to HTML config file. And let me run this on fourier.tech and make an output file called fourier2.html. No, do not correct. Okay, and let's open Fourier2. Why have we got a problem? This is always the danger of demos.
I don't know if it's important, but when you copied your files over, it didn't copy the templates and the whatever the other one was.
Yeah, that is important. Thank you very much. Let's try running that copy again. Let's try telling it to also copy subfolders. That's probably an important thing I missed. All right, let's do the previous step again. Okay, and let's just open this new Fourier2. So we're already quite a lot closer. We've got in my opinion, at least, a much nicer styled file. It's got back some of the features that we were looking for, like this kind of contents block at the top that lets me jump around. My figures have gone back to having figure references. I've recovered some of the links back between my figures and the text. my equations are numbered again and the links between them should work again. So this was the idea that someone could just download a kind of, I could give staff kind of a couple of commands which downloaded this kind of extra little package of tools and then let them run it against a file to produce kind of a nicer looking file than the one that pandoc creates by default. And I thought the last thing I wanted to show you was just that I wanted to show some examples of using this on something slightly larger than this kind of demo file. So I just wanted to show this against the course notes for the course I've been teaching last term. So I'm just going to change into my AMV notes folder and run pandoc against my AMV notes and get AMV notes for HTML. Okay, and so here's a PDF. It's going to take a little longer, of course, because MathJax is going to try and load all the maths that's in this entire set of a full term's worth of lecture notes. But this is it running against my full kind of course with all the equations, all the images, everything that I wanted in my main course notes. And I've not changed the tech, I think, for the course to do this at all. So this is just running against the existing course notes I had for this file. And last is to also show you that I used the exact same thing to do my problem sheets for my course as well. So I've got a file of all the problems for this course, and so I can just do the same kind of thing. I can do pandoc, tell it to load. Oops. Tell it to load the tech2html config file and run it against AMV probs.tech and produce AMV probs.html. And we get the full kind of problem sheet for my term. There's about 100. Oh no, there's not, because I changed the file last minute while I was doing a demo. Okay, in this version of the file that you're seeing, there's now only 7 problems, but okay, it's not really a key point anyway. So this is a problem sheet. This is suitable to give to students with the problems on. And there's one last thing, which is there's a little option I can run to say, show the solutions, and maybe change the name of the file to create a solutions file using this show solutions option. And we get a version of the file that also has the problems and the solutions. So again, these were the same tech files. This is even using kind of the actual LaTeX file for this. For people that are used to working with LaTeX, this uses kind of a custom class to produce this problem sheet. So pandoc plus text-to-HTML has been quite robust at handling quite a wide variety of files. I think a lot of the things that Ross kind of already mentioned for Chirun are true here. I'm not claiming this is going to handle all the arbitrary packages that members of staff are using, but it does seem pretty good. There are some things that I would like to add to this. Ross's toolbar, Christian's toolbar, to do actual changes to the font size and the contrasts of the document is a really great addition, and I've been meaning to write something that adds that in as well. And there's a few other things that I'd really like to fix if I had longer to go and work on this. But anyway, this is available. So this just produces HTML files that you can then do whatever you want with, whether that's upload to your VLE, or I tend to just host these off my department website and put links in the VLE to the files that I produce with this. So hopefully that kind of shows you how it works. I hope that wasn't too quick while kind of staying within the kind of time that I was asked to talk for. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I think that was a very succinct and useful demonstration. I understood what was going on, which was really nice. I also love that the other people did the live debugging of, have you noticed this? If you could all just come and be there whenever I have to do anything, that would be ideal. Questions?
I ran it all through earlier as well, just to check everything worked. Obviously, the version of me that was preparing to talk was slightly more on the ball than the version of me talking.
I'm not sure I've ever demonstrated anything and it's all gone perfectly, ever. And I think if I did, nobody would actually believe me that it was as good as I said it was if it all went perfectly. What questions have we got?
So I've tried this out on my modules, or my module that I'm teaching this term. And everything ran, so the first thing is almost everything ran very, very smoothly, got a nice HTML file, upload it to Moodle without needing to change the tech, which is the really important thing from the academic point of view. If we're going to get people to do it, it has to be without a lot of extra work. So I'm going to be really careful here. So on a Windows machine, the text2html.yarn thing didn't work out of the box. I had to go and delete some spare tabs and things.
Interesting. That's news to me.
So that was one. I do like how it came up with the so yeah, okay, so these are thoughts, and please don't, yeah. I think it's great. I really like how everything was clickable and equation numbers came back and all of that.
It's fine. I'm a big boy. You can be whatever you're about to say. It's okay. You can be honest.
So I ended up going back to the original pandoc one, the vanilla one. Partly because I ran out of time to keep playing around with this. And partly this is my fault because I wanted to release my lecture notes chapter by chapter, and nothing seems to. So if you have, a master file, include blah 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 blah, and then you have include only chapter 1, include only, it didn't recognize that. So all the equation numberings for chapter 2 started 1.1, 1.2, etc. So I ended up going with no equation numbers for the HTML, which I don't use hugely, to be fair, because you're lecturing on the Blackboard and whatever. And so I ended up going back to the original, partly because I couldn't get section 2 to have equation number 2, to have the equations going 2 point whatever. And perhaps a less thing, one of the things that we were going for HTML for was to allow students to have that, they can use their own font. So if somebody wanted a serif font, they could choose it. But if somebody else wanted a sans serif font, they could choose it. And the style file in text2html, I wasn't able to persuade Firefox, at least, to change the font for that. So it was as determined as the font in the PDF thing. So I don't know if that was me or if that's on purpose.
So
Whereas,
I think, sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, I also released my notes in chunks. I think it's a case where there's kind of one extra argument you need to give it to tell it what numbering you want to start from. So when
Okay.
the way the numbering works, unfortunately, it doesn't use the LaTeX kind of auxiliary files. So it doesn't have a memory of everything in the documents you're not building. So LaTeX does that by having this aux file that kind of keeps track of everything, right? Instead, it just goes and recounts things. And so if there are, so it starts counting from 1 for any document you give it, and it starts the section numbering from 1. I built in an option that lets you change the section numbering, so it starts from section 7, or if chapter 7 or whatever. But this is something that you have to know how to do. This tool is certainly not as slick at making it clear how you're supposed to use things, I think, but it is possible. If you drop me an email, I'm quite happy to send you a command that probably is the thing that you want. But I can see a problem in the fact that that only works if you know to ask me what the command is. And to your other point, I made the decision at some point to stick the style file onto a GitHub Pages and reference that style file. So although there is a local style sheet, it's not actually the one that gets used by default. It uses an external style sheet, which I host on a separate web page. So you can change the local one, but unless you also change in the relevant place to tell it to use the local style sheet instead, it won't work. That's because actually, it's just because of a lack of understanding of how to use Ultra on my part. I couldn't work out for the life of me in 2020 how to put a style sheet in the right relative location to the HTML file. And so once I put them onto a VLE, I couldn't use a local style sheet. And I decided that the best thing to do was just put an external style sheet, pick what were kind of some sensible defaults and use that. And then no one had to mess around also uploading style. I also thought that telling staff they had to upload both the HTML file and a style sheet was going to get me into trouble. And that it was easier for a few reasons, therefore, to use an external style sheet. You can overload it and use a local style sheet. I think the better answer to your question is I should really just put in something like Christian has, which allows you to change between. I don't know whether there was sans serif to serif was an option in Christian's thing, but there's no reason why.
But I liked the fact you could. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, if I can, might go and have a little inspection into the Chirun source code after this and steal a toolbar.
So the output of the vanilla pandoc doesn't have any style file. It's whatever the user picks, I think.
Right.
I know nothing, right? My job was, here are some LaTeX notes that I've got. Can we convert them easily? And both of the tools that I tried, the conversion was easy. And then can you upload them to Moodle for us? And that also turned out to be an easy thing. I gave my first lecture an hour before this thing. So I haven't even got any student feedback yet, but I have said that, I'm playing around. These are the advantages of having HTML notes, and let us know what you think. I've tried HTML before where we use Moodle books, but that had two source. I had to keep the PDF and the Moodle book source separately updated, which was too much work. So I wanted something where you just have one. So it did work.
I think as well, Pandoc's got a lot better in the intermediate 2 years, almost as if everyone is facing these same kind of problems, and the people working on Pandoc have made some massive improvements. I have not had time to go back and take out some of the assumptions that I made when I wrote these set of add-ons about what was possible in Pandoc. So there are a couple of things that I know of that if I was starting again today, I would do slightly differently. I would like to sit down and do that and improve the tool by just letting Pandoc do some of the things that I'm kind of doing myself, probably slightly inferior. It's just a case of, if enough people tell me that they are wanting me to do that, then maybe I can justify to the department that that's how I'm spending some time.
So yeah, no, thanks for doing this and then releasing it to everybody. It was fun playing around, and yeah, it did. I was really surprised at how easy it was to convert my current LaTeX without any extra work into HTML.
I was amazed I could get this to work quite so easily on a separate type of file, like the problems files as well, that use a separate class. The fact that that kind of worked with no additional messing around was pretty magic to me. And I quite liked the fact that I could quite easily hide and show solutions also without messing around with anything.
That was nice. So yeah, I've also done the same for the problems classes, and it was Cordelia who suggested this. Credit all to her. Of actually, that's probably more useful than the lecture notes, because lecture notes people are going to more likely print out. Problem sheets they take to seminars and will be using their phone to look at them. So that's much more modular all accessibility stuff. Just for bog standard, I'm looking at my notes in the current. They're the ones that want to be HTML, and yeah, that Moodle can cope with that as well. So we'll see how students feel about it. But
I think that's kind of been my approach. I am definitely not an expert in accessibility at all. So I kind of start from the point of, if I make a file that feels more accessible and useful for me, then hopefully that's also more accessible for a large number of people. And of course, if someone tells me they've got a specific requirement, then I will do my best to try and meet that need. I do not get a lot of feedback on this from my students. I've been for 3 years, I've made HTML versions of every single PDF available. I have not gone and looked at the logs that tell me how many times they were accessed relative to the PDFs, but I'm also not had a kind of any words from the students at all as feedback either one way or the other. So I don't know whether this has been a lot of time that the students aren't finding terribly useful or aren't making use of, or whether they're really appreciating it and there's just not that many things breaking.
Yeah, I'm explicitly asking them this year.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be sort of assuming we're going to be telling lecturers to do more HTML accessible stuff. It'll be good to back it up with it's useful here. But yeah, no, things work really well. And so thank you for putting your effort in and releasing it to us all.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I was just reading Christian's comment in the chat as well. Yes, that's something that we would I should do more of. I think we would like to work with DCAD perhaps to do more of this, to actually try and hear more from students when they don't reach out explicitly.
Thanks for that. I really like the fact you thought about it from the academic perspective of wanting to start with your LaTeX notes and not have to do something totally different, because that is one of the things. I'm going to take a clip of you doing that and send it to one specific academic who I know uses the same solutions thing as you and hadn't been quite sure it was working. And I'm just going to send her a flip and say, here you go. This is a wonderful example of how it works. Isn't it lovely?
I'm more than happy to talk to members of staff from whatever institution they're at if they want a little bit of help. If just pass them my email address.
Thank you. That's appreciated. I think one of the real strengths is how much everybody is willing to work together on all of this. That there's no perfect solutions at the minute, but we're all trying incredibly hard to try and get things. I put it in my members update last week, but there's a bit of talk about the wanting to get student views. I'm doing a bit of a research project at the minute with our maths and stats help team and with our maths department, which is a questionnaire and then a kind of, here's some examples, now tell us what you think of them, to get out to students to say, what do you actually like and why do you like it? Because very much what Chris was saying about, I don't want to tell staff you have to do this unless I know it's actually useful. And I'd like to get more information about that. But yeah, ours is called DDSS, but whatever your sort of disabled student support people are, they're quite keen to find it out as well. So if you're getting student feedback and you're willing to share the headlines from that, it would be really interesting. Be good to see what everybody else is getting. Okay, so yes, Lillian's comment about the glossary being a living document. Before we go on to member updates, anybody can update that glossary so long as we've given you access to GitHub. So I can get anybody set up on GitHub if you've never used it before. If you want a quick introduction to how it works, if you're confident and happy using it, just tell me what you use to log in and I can get you added onto there, because the idea is we keep adding as much useful information on there as we can so that other people aren't either reinventing the wheel or feeling very lost. Because I know when I started trying to do things about maths accessibility, I felt very lost for a long time and that I didn't quite know where I was going with it. So I'd like to try and help the people who are starting out on the journey so that they get a little bit of that earlier on. So yeah, if you're not already on the GitHub, please do get in touch. We can get you onto that straight away. Okay, so if I just have a little scroll down, nobody's put anything in at the minute to say that they definitely wanted to do anything on members updates. I can do the kind of picking on people, but nobody ever really likes that very much, do they? Is there anybody who's got something happening in their institution that they reckon they could do 5 minutes of tell us something exciting, interesting, or difficult that you want some comments on? Things that we could help you with is also a possibility. So we've got Christian, start with you, and anybody else if you want to be thinking, just have another 5 minutes at the end.
Sorry, I just put my hand at that. I put something in the wrong bit of the document towards the top. I didn't look far down enough. I just wanted to say that I had a look at pretext just before Christmas, which I think I've mentioned here before, a system developed in America. The idea is that you write this weird XML syntax to produce a book, and the idea is that it's meant to be only producing HTML, really. And I'd heard it was really good for accessibility. I wasn't that impressed in the end by what I saw. I don't think that there's anything that grabbed me as completely new that any of the stuff we've talked about doesn't do. But it may well come out with further looking that there's something. I'm going to talk with one of the lead developers on Friday. So I may be able to show you something about that later on if it turns out there's something incredible. But I think just to note that I've looked at pretext and it's fine.
Reviews of things saying not worth looking at right now are ideal. Thank you. Luke said you'd update via the chat. So Jill, do you want to just tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that? Hosting another session.
Oh yeah, I've just unmuted. We had a session, didn't we, to the accessibility community where quite a few people that are here contributed, and that was I think that was very successful. And I just wondered whether we are thinking about or could think about doing a sort of part two, or a repeat of that. But it looks like we're going to have more stuff to share and things to update from when we last talked about accessible maths more publicly.
Yes, definitely. And I think there's different audiences. So my bit of an update that I was going to put in and do quickly is that Telmo, which is teaching and learning maths online, we're going to be doing a workshop at that. So it's in conjunction with Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam. We're doing a whole city. It's nice to get the universities working together on it. Peter from Sheffield is working with me on it. We've got a rough programme that I brought to this group earlier, and as part of that, I will be saying about this working group, and that's targeting the academic side of it. It would be really nice to do a sort of similar thing, targeting the sort of digital learning developers, whatever we might be, kind of side of it as well. I think probably a bit of a different angle with a bit more. This one, definitely people are going to be going in from an idea of, you know how to use command line, here's how you do this bit. We might want a sort of a version which is more focused on, this is how to get your academics involved with this. This is the way that you might get enough understanding to be able to support them and help them. So yeah, keep doing those sorts of outward facing events. Seems like a great plan.
Thank you.
So we've got Luke's in there. If people have got questions for Luke, do you want to pop them in the chat or pop your microphone on? I'm just having a very quick read. Yeah. Oh, Luke, I don't have our impact assessment of going from Learn to Learn Ultra and the impact on accessibility, but when you get yours, I'll be very interested to hear, because I think there's people here would be keen, because we're doing a VLE review in the not distant future too. Sounds like a difficult place to be for a week. And you've come here for some light relief and some human contact, so we can all tell you that you're doing a great job. Fantastic. Good luck with it. Okay, anybody else with quick updates for the last 5 minutes? Oh, in which case we might finish a little early, which is always very nice. There's a suggestion for the next meeting. So we've got Ibrahim to talk about something at the next meeting, and Lillian, you had a suggested date, didn't you? Could you remind me of that
Yeah,
date?
I think we're looking at the 20th of Feb. 12:30 to 1:30. So I'm just going to stick it at the bottom where people are kind of hanging around. Right at the bottom before the 14th of November notes. So yeah, that's the suggestion, that we'll run it on the 20th of Feb. Ibrahim is going to show us some more Chirun. I think it's worth us keeping circling around the kind of solutions that people are finding is worthwhile. Alexandra, my colleague here, who is here, they're using R markdown, which we've seen before. David very kindly demonstrated to us the workflow for using R markdown. So I think it is worth us, it's like scaffolding, isn't it? It's going round and round, and every time we see it, we become more familiar, more confident. So those of us who are in a learning technology role, who need to have a bit of everything to promote to colleagues, can benefit from that. Other colleagues, you know, Chris, I'm sure most of your colleagues will want to kind of stick with their tech files. Once in a while, you might come across a colleague who's going, "Oh, have you heard of using R?" Then you know there are other colleagues in the university that you can direct them to. So it's useful to have a toolkit for making accessible maths, not just one thing. So I think, you know, I think Cordelia and I are quite passionate about math picks from the point of view of what students can do with it from a note-taking point of view. So I've been working with one of Chris's students on being able to use that for note-taking. But at the Durham conference, I went up to, I can see his face, can't see his name, Nicholas, and said, "MathPix is amazing. Can you guys go and buy them?" And he didn't say yes, but he just smiled and said, "We're talking to them," which made me jump up and down in excitement, as in like maybe they're licensing it or they're doing something. So it's a case of watch this space. That's the only update I have. It's not a real update, but exciting.
That is a very exciting update. I could see some good things happening from that. So, on the actions from last time, there's actually something on there about Ben and George asked about the STEM minimum standards resource. Have you all seen that? Because I think it's fab. It got shared on the Teams for an accessibility community recently as well, and it seems to be getting very good feedback. Seems like a really nice place to start as well. I don't think I've put that onto our GitHub yet, so I could go put a link to that onto the GitHub whilst I remember today. I think it's a nice starting point. Okay, well, thank you very much. Lots of really interesting demonstrations today. You made both of them seem so nice and like they worked so smoothly, and I understood them all, which is always a really nice feeling for somebody who is a little sketchy on some of the LaTeX, because I don't use it anywhere near as much as you do. So it felt very achievable, and there's some good things to share there. Thank you very much for that. We'll see you in February. In between then, I hope things go well for you. Hope any exam marking and everything else you've got going on is as painless as possible. Yes, and bring more academic colleagues. I'm going to try and bring Rosie next time because she's absolutely fab. She's been doing LaTeX ML and Jupyter Book, both of which have had good results.
Yeah, I'll be keen to see some Jupyter notebook stuff, I think.
Yeah, Alex Best is going to talk about it at the Talmo one, so I don't think I can convince him to come and talk about it twice in a row.
Yeah.
But Rosie's been trying it out as well, and could do a little bit of talking about her workflows, different things that she's tried, because she's been trying everything. She's really good. You might want a practice run. Yeah, he's just a very busy man because he does lots of interesting and good things. I'll see what my bribery skills are like. Okay. Right. Take care.
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.
David, you don't need to feel like you need to contribute all of the time. We are very much all here to listen. the only reason I'm contributing is because I'm chairing. I'm mostly here so that I can hear what everybody else is doing.
And very ever so grateful for you showing us our markdown last time as well, David, and making that little change again with the contrast, the accessibility of the menu bar at the top. It's fabulous. So yeah, we're really happy. And Alexandra, who was here, has used your suggestion, you know, for the CSS, etc. So it's absolutely fabulous. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Jenny. I'll write up the minutes. Cheers. Bye.